Good evening, everyone, and a very happy new year to each one of you who are joining us today for the first ever episode of Right Circle in 2022. Let's hope this year, in spite of starting on such a dull note for most of us, is happier, healthier going forward from here. We can only hope for the best. We have a very sparkling writer with us today. I still remember the day when she wrote to me years back out of the blue. And she was one of those rare writers that after reading the first chapter, I wrote to her saying, "We are signing you on." So I'm terrifically proud to present to all of you Jane D'Souza, who's a best-selling author, columnist, and a creative consultant. She's also someone very unique because she combines the strength of writing for adults and for young adults, which are two different age groups completely, has bestsellers under both broad categories. And she also deals with young adult mental health in her new books. And the newest book is Midnight Years, which is something that you all will be receiving from our end once you send us your postal addresses. And her first book is the funniest ever. I still go through some pages and I chuckle over it. It's called The Spy Who Lost Her Head. And she's also done another series for middle grade kids called the Super Zero series. She's done a book called Uncool, an adult book called Happily Never After. Jane also has an advertising professional's hat on her head. So you can see that she's multifaceted. And as of now, very proud to announce that she's also writing a feature film. To moderate the session with us is Rukma Prince, who's a research scholar in English literature, and her areas of interest are in contemporary South Asian fiction, memory and trauma studies, human rights narratives, and sociology of literature. She has in the past worked with Siahi, and we are also extremely, extremely proud of Rukma and her achievements. And it's nice to have her back. At least we've been trying to get her back to work with us, but it's nice to have her back at least in some way to be involved with Siahi. So Right Circle is here for you. I'm going to hand over to Rukma in a minute. Sponsored and presented by Sri Siemens in association with Prabha Khaitan Foundation, SAS Women and Spagia Foundation. I'm going to request each one of you to please send your postal addresses within the next 48 hours to Urvi at her number, which is 8769-291-461. I repeat, 8769-291-461. Just another housekeeping tip. Jane is very open to the audiences to intervene while she's speaking if they have an impromptu question to ask, so that it becomes even more interactive as we go along. So feel free to raise your hand and ask a question while the conversation is on, because Rukma and Jane will stop and make sure that your question gets answered. With that, I'm going to go off video. And a very warm welcome to you, Jane and Rukma, and thank you to all our members of the audience for having joined us today.
Thank you, Meeta.
Right. Thank you, Meeta. Thank you for that. I think I'll just dive straight into the conversation now, because we all need extra large servings of wit and charm right now in our lives more than anything. And Jane is a professional dispenser of the funnies. So let's get started. I'll start off. So hi, Jane.
Hi.
You're joining us from Singapore, right?
That's right.
You shifted right before the pandemic, I heard, and that must not have been easy. How did that go?
Also right. Yeah. So yes, I moved about 4 years back to Singapore with, big dreams, big ideas, moving out into the big unknown, which it actually translated into being, because nobody could have known that the pandemic hit. So a whole lot of those ideas and the dreams just crashed, and we found ourselves, we did some traveling around Asia and Southeast Asia and a little bit of that, but pretty soon walls closed. Singapore's very tiny. So to protect the people here, borders went down, and we've been in a little bubble ever since then.
Okay, yeah. That reminds me of your one of your latest books that Meeta just mentioned, When the World Went Dark. So for those who are not familiar with this book of Jane's, it's marketed for children. It's set during the pandemic, and even though it's something that was written for children, okay, Jane's reaching out for the book. It's something that resonates with everyone because in a sense, we were all, like she said, we were all put out into the unknown and the world did go dark. So was that something, was it a way of coping with the pandemic? Was that something that was in your mind when you wrote it?
Right. So the When the World Went Dark is about loss. Okay, it's a book about loss. And you're right in saying that it's about a child coping with loss and the entire family. Set in the pandemic, because that's when in the first phase we saw this incredible losses all over. And why I wrote it is because I have two boys of my own, and I noticed while adults were talking about this loss, death, fear, kids had nowhere to really turn to. Nobody was listening to them, nobody was talking to them. They're treated as kids. And so to give them some way through to understand how to accept it. So that's where the book began, talking about loss to children. And as since I'm a humor writer primarily, it's very funny, which is a strange thing to balance. But it's actually about, because many of us have that child inside us which does not want to talk about things, which does not accept things, which does not understand this big black dark cloud around us, and we put on a brave face. So it's for a lot of us adults too.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can relate to what you said about not wanting to deal with things during the pandemic. Yeah, I personally, yeah. So you spoke about the balance in your works right now, and another one of the things that I keep admiring about your work is how you bring in a range of voices, where you can write anything from, say, a nerdy wannabe cool teenager like Sharad in Midnight Years to a 30-something-year-old frazzled housewife, mother of three, like Tina Raja from Happily Ever After. So how do you flip between these very diverse characters and narrative voices so effortlessly also?
Very interesting question. Thank you. So as a writer, if I were to write in just singular voice, it would be largely autobiographical. Yeah. But one of the things I love to be and why I've become a writer is because I get to slip under the skins of so many different people. Right? So there are teenagers, there are superheroes, there's an espionage agent, there's a spy. And that's the part I love, because everybody's so different, and especially representing voices that are not heard. So the Flyaway Boy, there's this child who's lost and who's trapped in his own world, and he's so different from everyone else. So if we writers don't write their stories, who will? And each one gives me a chance to understand a whole different kind of person and to then present that. That's what I love about this job.
I think that's what your readers appreciate about you as well the most. So yeah, you mentioned about how the autobiographical element seeps into your work sometimes. And so I was wondering which among your protagonists in the Midnight Years. So you have Alicia, who's the cool girl, who's, all goth makeup and everybody wants to be her. Sharad, who's the nerd aforementioned, who wants to be cool. Then there's AK, who's the rich boy, he's the troublemaker. And then there's Ruhi, who's very sweet, very studious, but still wants to be Alicia. So who were you as a teenager? Give us a glimpse into Jane as a teenager.
There's a little bit of me in every character. Okay, there's a little bit of mean every character, but these 4 stereotypes are stereotypes of the teens. So there is the girl who is misunderstood. There's a youngster who's misunderstood. I think we all felt that way, alienated, misunderstood, trying so hard to be someone that we're not. There is the boy who lives for other people's expectations, his family's expectations. That's why he's studying. And that I see among youngsters today very, very strongly. They're living someone else's dream. There's the privileged kids, so-called privileged kids, rich kids who are written off. But he has so much depth to him in the book, in the Midnight Years. And there's this girl who's very good, like, 90% of our young people are so good. She does good grades, good behavior. And then she just wants to do something that's not good. And that's a costly mistake. So yeah, these, if as I'm talking, I don't know, my audience and you can, are little things triggering off, like, that was me at some point of time. This too is me. There is.
Yeah, I think I was mostly a Ruhi.
Okay, good little girl.
Yeah, I was mostly. Sad life though. So you mentioned you have sons who are teenagers. So do they read your books? Do they give you notes and say, "Mommy, this doesn't work"? Teenagers don't talk like that. So yeah, does that happen?
Yeah.
Do they read your books?
I've taken their advice on things like book titles, covers, especially their advice, their friends' advice, because getting to a reader before the book is out is quite priceless. So, and there are things that I've changed. So just taking feedback there's no point. So I do write. I reach out to a whole lot of people, a whole lot of young readers, and ask them about certain chapters, books, synopsis. Would this be? And they'll say no, like, Ma, that's not something we'd say. That's something you think we'd say. So then, oops, out it goes. Yeah, it's a lot of research.
I can imagine. I think I was asking you the other day, did you go on social media? Did you have an anonymous TikTok account that kept you informed about all
I
of
can't
these
tell you
things?
that, can I? It won't be anonymous anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, true. That's a fallacy. So you spoke about how a lot of teenagers, a lot of young children live for somebody else's dreams. That's something that you tackle in the Flyaway Boy as well. So yeah, and that Flyaway Boy is one of your most celebrated books, if I remember right. It was shortlisted for the Times of India Prize and at the Neve Literature Festival. So why do you think that is a theme that keeps resonating with your readers repeatedly? Why was it so well received?
Yeah, that was a surprise to me, because Flyaway Boy is about. So this is the Flyaway Boy, and you can see that he doesn't have a face. And interestingly, a lot of readers juxtapose their faces into this boy. That's what happened. So this is a book that was very, very close to my heart, because it's about a child who's wired differently, who thinks differently, and doesn't quite fit in to what society expects him to be, or his parents, his school, that little box, the little structure, the little formula for success. And he's completely different. And so I have felt like that at times in my life. And I wanted to write this book, and I wrote it. And when it went out, and, Penguin published it, and so many hands went up saying that, this is me, and this, I can relate to this. And I always felt a little different, or I did not fit in. And that was surprising and very, very nourishing is the only word I can feel, because it goes back into, back into me and makes me feel so gratifying. Yeah.
Yeah, starting with the Flyaway Boy, I want to talk about some of your older work. Especially Meeta mentioned the funniest, the wackiest, the most original being the spy who lost her head. So how do you manage to keep it fresh like that? How do you come up with a voice like Gulabi? She's so colorful, just like her name. So how does that happen? Take us through that.
Okay, so Gulabi is this, very colorful character, no English speaking, from Middle India. small town, small village, and totally politically incorrect. And she gets into this big city, and the spy who lost her head. So, and she's completely loony, right? Now,
Yeah.
so the little known secret is that I was born and raised and brought up in a small town too, in that area.
Okay.
And the women there, I feel in North India, they're so misunderstood, women in villages or small towns, because we only see the side to them that's suppressed, oppressed, and quiet, traditional. But they've actually got such a raunchy sense of humor, for example, and they're feisty, and they live within their roles, but they live such colorful lives, honestly. So Gulabis come out of there, out of my experiences from there, though of course a lot of exaggeration or the book.
Yeah, so because like we just heard how Gulabi deserves a special showcase. And so I requested Jane to maybe read out a small excerpt from The Spy Who Lost Her Head for our benefit. And yeah, we just have to get a slice of that.
I have to get a light going. I think. So I'm going to read from the very beginning of the book. And it's the book starts with an ad. But this is just to give you an idea of the way she speaks and the way the book's written and why everybody's calling it unique, because it's not. So this is what she says. This is the ad. There's an ad that goes up in the newspaper, how it starts, the book starts. I want to sell my head. It is giving me much headache. If you have the perfect body, let us meeting in secret and see if you like head. It is first class head, only dead. Email headfulwoman@gmail. Please note, I and my head are having many evil followers. All risk to your own head is your own problem. And then it goes on to the mails that she receives. So, dear big boy, I think you are sick. I am not interested in giving you anything, any body part. Please show respect. Yours truthfully. Then in brackets, I am not yours. This is respectful Queen's English ending, Gulabi. Dear Dr. Sahib, no, I am not having any ovaries for sale. No kidneys too. I have no body parts trading except head. Dear smileys.com. No, I am not interested in being cartoon or being mascot. I am not having natural humor genes. I'm not wearing jeans at all, in fact. And so it goes on. So this is the way that language is played around with and humor. And that's how it starts. That's her voice.
Thank you for that, Jane. And I think only she could have come up with something like that.
It gets a little more sane, I promise.
Another thing that came up just now was a lot of internet humor, right? Most of it blogs, if you take Happily Never After, which came, yeah. So in Happily Never After, Tina writes a blog and it receives a lot of slightly harmless, but also very, very creepy comments. Which is something that we saw right now with Gulabi's ad as well as responses to Gulabi's ad. So you mentioned that you have also blogged. You used to blog extensively. I've not done that. Is that how the space is? Because it's so creepy. It's so funny and creepy at the same time.
So that's how my writing career actually started. I mean, it's always a writer and in advertising. But when I've had my first baby and I stayed home, and it was nothing like what I had read about, all the roses and the maternal love, nothing like that. It was like, I wanted to tear out my hair every few hours. The baby wouldn't sleep and it was leaking from both ends, and I wanted milk all the time, not it, sorry, he. So I love him very much. But so
I hope he's not listening in right now.
No, he's not. At that point, I began to blog just to get it out of my system, and with humor. So describing the funny things that were happening to me in my life. So I'd be, feeding him and blogging. And again, a lot of hands went up, a lot of many women who said, this is me, I can relate. Why don't you put this into a book? So no, they weren't, probably because it was a kind of um, parenting blog, nothing really creepy. But I know now, now the kind of fights that happen online and the nasty stuff that gets saying that it's a free for all, this space.
Wait, are you on Twitter? Are you talking about Twitter?
No, you're still trying to get that, right? My anonymous stalker account. No, I'm not giving you that. Yeah.
Okay, I will keep trying. I will be relentless. So yeah, we were talking about Happily Ever After, and so Happily Ever After came out in 2016, and I think it filled a space in the market, which was back then filled with, for us Indian readers, especially for women, filled with boys being boys at IITs, at IIMs, and very sappy love stories. I am naming no names, but I think we all know who I talk about. Anyway, so Happily Ever
Anonymous,
After
yes.
was very realistic and it was hilarious, like you mentioned. So was it a sort of feminist writing back? Did you consider that, I need to take the space back? So yeah.
Yeah. No, not consciously.
Mhm.
Not consciously. It was more a writing about ordinary people. Ordinary people deserve to be listened to. Why should our books and why should our fiction and be always about, somebody who's had a life that we will never have,
Mhm.
or something, something so crazy or so outlandish or so. So it was about a very ordinary woman trapped between the dreams that she had and she thought that she would be, and the life that she finds herself in. And so many of us, men and women, are trapped, but it need not be a negative thing, because we can make so much in our little bubbles or in our little spaces to not feel really like the walls are closing in. So humor is a great, I find humor, a great way to cope and to deal with things. And that's what I try to bring out in the book. There's only that much of whining or whinging about our situation. Just live with it, and she finds it fun. She finds ways to make it fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking, I just want to go back to the realism of it there. Um, a lot of your work discusses very serious, very real life issues, be it the unpaid and often invisible labor that people, the characters like Tina have to do, moms have to do, uh, called housewives, but yeah, working as hard as anyone else. Or the kind of stereotypes of lesser privileged groups in a book like The Spy Who Lost Her Head. So, how do you reconcile the use of humor, which has an inherent irreverence to it? How do you do it for such weighty real life social problems?
Humor is a great tool. It's a great weapon. Uh, I've been asked how you can write in humor. I don't know if it's something that can be taught. I'm not aware of it. It's the way. So one of my first ever stage shows, I was up on stage and I got this question: how do you write in humor? And I was reading an answer which was, very self-congratulatory and stuff like, I'm this funny. I'm lucky that I find. And then I was with a psychiatrist who cut in and said humor is a defense mechanism.
Mm.
So yes, so from the earliest times, earliest stages and ages in our life, we find ways to cope with the world. So he told me, Jane, when you were probably young and you were hurt or somebody said something that you didn't like or you wanted to, you couldn't, you can know, you can hit back in anger or by withdrawing. There are different ways to. So mine was, according to him, was humor, and the way it has a great way of putting people's defenses down. So
Yeah.
now when I write in humor, I can tackle the most sensitive topics, which I'm doing, and mental health, death, and autism. And it is always accepted, because by the time you're reading about it and you're laughing, and much later the reader realizes that, it seeps in, and yeah, this is the point being made. But if it was made in all seriousness, like it is often, then immediately, your hackles go up and no, this is not right. I stand on this side of the fence and you stand on this side. But with humor, all that's brought down. It's mellowed. You're in a completely different mood and you're so much more receptive.
Was that
That's my
something that
theory.
you were trying to do in the midnight years, which you co-authored? And yeah, so was there an effort to bring together the psychological side of humor to the all the angst that teenage years has to offer?
Yes. Yes. So I co-authored it with a psychologist.
Yeah.
So there's a non-fiction part. This is the Midnight Years, and
Mhm.
and the fiction. So there's a story, and the story raises certain questions, in my minds, and the story actually reflects questions that youngsters or young adults could have, and the
Mhm.
psychologist answers these questions in the nonfiction part then. So there are questions which says that, is this normal, a family that fights like mine? That's one question. And she answers it. She answers all
Yeah.
these questions. There are about 30, 40 odd questions, which in the narrative, in the story, every time you hit a certain situation, a question's raised by that character,
Mhm.
which, she says, so Ruhi says at one point, if I'm being bad, why does it feel so good? And that
Mhm.
is answered also, from the psychologist, by what's happening exactly inside the brain.
Yeah. Reminded me of one of those choose your own adventure books as well,
Okay.
where you can,
Right.
choose your own rational thoughts.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay,
Sounds
so
nice.
yeah. So between the superhero books, the YA literature, and the books that you write, like Happily Never After, that's for an older audience, you've covered a lot of ground. But is there something that you haven't done yet that you would really like to, that you would like to experiment with? Also, this applies to both life and your writing. What do you want to experiment
What
with?
I would like to do. Yes, I've been long since, and I've been telling Meeta this, I've been long since wanting to write a psychological thriller. So,
Mhm.
yeah. So I've been writing, right now, I'm writing one for a different purpose for film, but I've been wanting to write a psychological thriller which has some romance in it, but it is such a
Mhm.
dark, deep area. And I find myself very hard to please, in this genre, because uh, I don't want to write something that's predictable, and that loses the whole aspect. So not just thriller, not being somebody in a dark room waiting with a hatchet. That's not a thriller,
Mhm.
but what's going on in the mind and how those twists actually. Okay. So the past few years in the books have been moving into the mental psychological space, and it's a fascinating space. I love psychology, studied it, and so that's the area that I'm looking to get into.
Okay. What did you read as a young reader? Like what were your
What
influences
made me so
going
weird?
into?
Is that right?
Yeah, yeah. Basically, I was just trying to be nice there.
Yeah, I read just about anything. I read
Mhm.
labels on bottles if there was nothing else there. I read
Mhm.
so it was before the, sad to divulge my age, but before the internet and the phone era, where, attention spans were just one message long. So sorry, but now, but we read books. And I read, my favorites were animal books, wildlife.
Mhm.
I
Okay.
absolutely love animals. And I loved those books, Jack London's Call of the Wild, books like that. Um, yeah, mostly wildlife, nature, and understanding species that were not us, the ones that we share our planet with. So that was my.
Okay, I think we wouldn't have gotten along as readers at all. That is one genre that I completely stayed away from. Still do. I still don't know.
Okay.
So another thing, again, going back to what you were saying about books being partly autobiographical, do you borrow anecdotes or slash characters also from real life into your books? And if so, are your family and friends terrified that one day they'll, find themselves immortalized in your pages?
Somebody sent me a mug which says, don't annoy the author because she'll put you into a book and kill you off. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so yeah. So definitely the answer to that is yes, but very well
Mhm,
disguised. Don't worry. I am a habitual and eavesdropper, and I pick up conversations with all sorts of people. So here in Singapore, we live near the sea, and I go for walks every evening, and I talk to all sorts of people. So and really, I ask them about their day, but not as like stalkerish as that sounds. But I talk to kids, about people walking dogs. Those are my favorite. Taxi drivers, people sitting next to me in the bus or in a bus queue. Conversations is startup, and these are like say a bird making a nest. These are all put away, all these little things. That's how I get. You asked me how I can get into different people's skins. That's one reason. That's one way
mhm,
of doing it. And all these somewhere they're all not they're all biographical, let's say. They're all about people whom I've met, and somewhere along the idea, when I'm thinking of a book or a certain situation, that comes back into my mind. So those are all the building blocks.
All right. Yeah. So you mentioned how you go around in the city and then you eavesdrop on conversations. Very questionable, by the way. Anyway. So yeah, I noticed that Bangalore makes all these very endearing, cute cameo appearances in your works. And what was it about that city that made you write a lot about it? So
Bangalore. Firstly, I've
yeah.
spent the largest portion of my life. It's been quite nomadic. I was, all over studying somewhere, born somewhere. And Bangalore's been the time where I spent most of my adult life, many, many years, and had a family.
Mhm,
So I think of Bangalore as a place which we people have built. There is a traditional side, like all cities have, an old rich side with heritage, say Malleshwaram, those areas. But largely Bangalore today is built by the people, and that people that who've come in to Bangalore.
mhm,
And so it's a face with it is a city with so many faces, so many facets, and the people are lovely. I love Bangaloreans. I'm sorry, but for saying this and self-congratulatory again, but very laid back, very accepting, which is a big thing. They're non-judgmental because, like, on the floor that we lived on in the apartment, there was a Kashmiri opposite. There were Jains next door. There was a Mallu family right opposite us, and then there was us, and we are completely mixed up family. Okay, yeah. So so and that's Bangalore. So it gets you to completely melt in. It's a melting pot.
Okay. So I was saying that yeah, it's very refreshing to hear you talk about Bangalore, not in terms of nostalgia. A lot of people still hold on to the fact that, oh, all of Bangalore is not like Malleshwaram right now. So yeah, that's very refreshing. Thank you for that. So yeah, next thing I wanted to know is what are you currently working on? Nita mentioned a movie in the intro, but can you tell us more about it?
Well, technically, no, because I've signed an NDA, which means I
Okay.
can't tell you which movie it is. But yes, I'm writing a story for a film, which is very, very exciting, very
Yes.
different. Yeah, and it's for, I mean, conventional Bollywood. It's nothing. So what it's about is it is in the space of, as I mentioned, psychological thriller.
Mm. I think anything with an NDA just is inherently cool. So Yeah, great going on that.
Yeah.
How is it different writing for the screen?
Oh my God, it was a splash of cold water. It was very, very different. So I thought I've got this genre of writing, just I've got it covered. I can write just about anything. I write a column, I write articles, I write for advertising, I write books, magazines. So, but this was completely different. So the primary difference is in a book, when you're writing a book, it is at least a good book. It is, which I hope my books are, it's about going deep. Yeah. It's about getting your reader to think about what the character is thinking about, to experience those feelings, those emotions, the trauma, the dilemmas, so it is a lot of inward looking. Whereas a film is just the opposite. A film is show, don't tell. So the film is, you can't, you have somebody lifting a mug, and in a book, you could write 2 pages of it about what looking into the water, the face, or the depth, the whirlpool, and the pain of losing somebody, something about that, right? You can't do that in a film, right? The film only has, so the character lifts a mug and then what? So
Yeah.
a film is all show and not tell. And the actions and what you're seeing visually, audio, has to tell the story. So that was a challenge, but yeah, love challenges, don't we?
Yeah, very cool though, all of it. But if you had to say, you have a dream list of actors who you want in your movies, playing characters that you have created, who would they be?
No, I think I'll pass on that, because right
Okay.
now I don't know who will feature in it, and I don't want to be the person
Yeah,
who says
break
that.
the NDA also.
Yeah, and yeah. So yeah, but I definitely have my film crushes on, and I think would do very well in the film, but not up to me.
All right.
And who I'd like to meet
Okay.
while in the filming.
I'm
Largely.
also like thinking of people who I can meet via you, because now I have a contact in Bollywood right now. So yeah, I'm going to spend all week thinking about that. So I think we can open up, take a few questions now. So if any of the participants want to ask questions, maybe like raise your tiny yellow Zoom hand, and Ulvi is going to put you through. So.
Thanks, Rukma. You guys can either raise your hands, I'll patch you in, or you can use the Q&A option and put your questions there, and I'll ask Jane on your behalf. For the first question, we have Mr. Rajiv Bagarhata. I'm just going to loop him in.
May I see, could I see the video? Could I see who's asking me, or that's the video's off?
No, he will not be able to do video.
Okay, sure.
While I think he's taking a bit of time to respond. In the meantime, we've got one of the audience members in the audience, Aditi Goyal, saying, Fawad Khan, please, for your Bollywood actor /
adaptation. Yeah.
So who is the suggestion?
Fawad Khan.
Fawad Khan.
Not up to me.
Is that someone on your list though?
Well, there's a very strong female lead character. So yeah.
There's a question here, Jane, that says, you combat uncomfortable situations with humor, but when do you think anger or other emotions will do better?
So we can only write from the strengths of the talents that we have. Okay, there are definitely writers who bring across a point much stronger with anger. I'm not one of them. But however, writing about a situation or an issue, even if I write in humor and I write a column, for example, can provoke anger in someone else. So if that's the end purpose, it can very well be done. You know, if righteous anger, because if there is some injustice and you feel that anger is a response to it, it can be done through humor, you know, through satire. Satire is a good tool to actually bring out something that will make people sit up and take notice. So anger can be provoked. But good question.
Thank you. We've got another question from Rashmi, who asks, do you have anything you would want to change now in your books?
Thank you. Wow. Yes. I think part of the burden of being a writer, a traditional writer, nowadays online you can change, is that once it's out in print, there's nothing that you can do about it, right? So almost, I've heard this among my writer friends as well, is that, you know, once the book is out and, you know, after it going up and down through the editing and publishing, and then when it's finally out, you don't want to open it because you're too scared at that point that you'll find some typo or spello or some error or something that you don't like. So this is very common among authors. But what would I like to change my books? I think I was in the beginning, it was, I should have had more courage in some of the books because they didn't go deep enough. The Super Zero, for example, went into a series. It was supposed to be one book for children and it went into a series of 3 because the audience asked for it. You know, the readers asked for the second one and then the third one. And it was a bit of making people just laugh. And in the earlier work, the actually getting a message through wasn't done. Maybe in hindsight and going back to check and do, I would have liked to do that as well.
Thank you, Jane. I think Rajiv is here with this question.
Yeah. I am an aspiring author, I should say that. What step during the publishing process was the most difficult you found? I mean, whether the publishing itself was difficult or getting the book off the shelf was more difficult. And were you optimistic all the time?
Was I optimistic?
Were you optimistic, all the time?
No. So I'll tell you the stages in the beginning. I don't start on anything. It takes me longer to get to, as Meeta knows, get to start a book than actually writing it. Because I go for walks and the character has to come to me till the character is as real as, you know, someone I know what they like to eat or smell or do or walk or talk and what they're afraid of. Till that's so real in front of me, till then I don't start writing. So that process sometimes, like the Midnight Tears took, I think, 5 or 6 years to write. But so that's a long process for me, but that is a very good process. It needs that time to get a really strong character. There are authors who are, there are books that are plot driven and character driven, right? So mine are largely character driven, and strong characters. So that's one stage. Writing it, as I said, it just flows, it writes itself. I don't stick to the plot because it, you know, it has a life of its own by then. I've never really found a problem with publishers or editors. Work very well together, especially the editors in, you know, the publishing houses, the very good lot. What I really don't like is the self-promotion. So I like to write the book, and then after that, I'm awfully shy or self-conscious about going out and, you know, keeping on promoting it or writing about it. And this is you know, on Instagram. I have an Instagram account which has 0 posts, for example. I have many followers but 0 posts. So yeah, so that's the part of the publicity which I really don't enjoy. I do a lot of talks or interviews or sessions like that, but I don't like actively selling my book.
Oh, that's very humbling. Thank you. Thank
Thank you.
Yeah.
All the best with your writing career.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raji. We've got the
Thank-
next question from Shambhavi. I'm just patching her in.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
I'm just a student who likes literature, especially Indian authors. So I read Flyaway Boy a few months back, I would say,
Okay.
and it's amazing how I can see the perspective of the perspective of Kabir in how he sees the adult society. So how do you dive into that mind space of Kabir so easily?
So Kabir, you want to know how I have dived into Kabir's mind space?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. So Kabir is a boy who's misunderstood, right? He's a boy who is differently wired. He thinks differently. He doesn't do the things that I expected or say the things that I expected. And many people have asked me if he's on, if I've written a book about a disabled person or somebody on the autism spectrum. So I don't have a definite answer to that because many people undiagnosed, many of us maybe are also somewhere on the spectrum. We're not all perfect. There is somebody has anger issues, for example. Somebody is very withdrawn and introverted to a point. So the whole point about writing about Kabir, about building a character like Kabir, is that there should be no judgment and there should be no boxing of a person. If you have this perfect child that a school wants to create, and there is someone who doesn't fit that, this is the Flyaway Boy was an attempt to get people to understand that people are different, that everyone's different, and to even if to just look at things from someone else's perspective and say and find that it's not so bad after all. That was the attempt.
Thank you, ma'am. The book really helped through a lot of things. So thank you.
Oh, lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Shambhavi. Jane, the next question is from Maya. She asks, what was the turning point where you realized you had this in you to be a writer?
Okay. There was no turning point, Maya. I've been writing. This is the way I've been expressing myself. I'm an only child. So from the time I was little, and as I said, without phones and, social media at that point of time, personal phones at least, I used to read a lot and I used to write rubbish stories, but nobody ever told me when I was a kid that I was writing rubbish stories. But I was always writing, and then I wrote from college and I wrote for international contests. And the turning point is actually when it became commercial. And that is when, he took it up. And when I decided to actually not make a living, but actually earn out of it and put it into the public. That's a very, very big step for me. It was a very brave step because you're putting yourself, you're putting your mind and your thinking out there. Up till then, the writing's been protected.
Thank you. The next question is from Priya. She asks, in this time of internet trolls, do you fear them? Do you worry about this aspect while you write?
Yeah, so since I'm being honest, I do. I do. Am I afraid that there will be somebody who disagrees and is completely objects to something that I have written? Yes, I am afraid. Does it stop me? Probably not. Because there is a decision that you make when you decide to go out and be in the public eye and to, there's a decision, and it comes with as it comes with such great things, so many pros, it also comes with these cons.
Right, thank you. There's a couple of questions here who are asking about your writing strategy. So I'll just read two of them out together because they're related. Sure. There's one that says, would you please share your writing strategy? How do you plan your narratives? And there's another one who's asking if you could give them some tips on becoming a good writer.
Okay, so the writing strategy, there are different types of writers. I have many in my writing circle who, not the right circle, but the writers circle, who have this discipline of 1,000 words a day. I'm sure you've heard of that. Just come in and write anything. I'm not like that. I'm a very, very mood-driven writer, an author. So as I said, the idea is very, very important to me, the idea, the character. And if it's not there, I can't write. I just can't write. I just can't come to my laptop and churn out words. So my writing strategy, and if I do get onto that stage, like the most difficult books, like When the World Went Dark, took about 3 months, the beginning till the end. 3 months, 6 months, maybe 9 months to a year. But then I write through the nights, and once it's driven, once it's in there, and then I start there are times when I'm talking to myself because I'm actually talking to the character. Thankfully nowadays it's all accepted because everybody's talking to themselves, with the earpiece and stuff. So nobody thinks it's odd. But that's the way I write. I write in bursts of complete passion and frenzy, and that's the way I believe that writing has to come from. I mean, this is a cliche, but it's true. It has to come from a space that is slightly in the subconscious and very deep inside you, from a very strong belief. You cannot write like somebody else, like J.K. Rowling. There's only one person who can write like that. You have to write like you.
Thank you. You've also answered another question that someone asked, which was, would you say that the love or passion for writing comes from within, or can someone be taught or learn to be a writer?
Yeah, it comes from within. You just know. The same way I've heard about those who love music, for example. Right. There is nothing else that you'd rather be doing. And writing is a form of expression. So if you really want to put your thoughts out there, then there's very little that can stop you. What could be taught is probably techniques, plotting, sharpening it, editing, using correct syntax, using spaces, timing. These are things that could be taught. The actual technique of the craft. But the passion and the initial spark can't be taught.
Right. The next one is from Mohita, who asks, you said you're a shy and self-conscious person. Did you feel that way before you decided to get your work published? And if yes, how did you overcome it?
I haven't. I haven't overcome it. But there are things that have to be done. So by profession, by education, I'm an MBA and from a leading institute in India. And I have not spent a single day doing what I was trained to do, the management. I joined advertising and very soon I became a writer. And that's what I meant. There are many choices that we keep making, right? Many choices. And roads that we keep taking. And one thing I've never said no to an open door. If there is an opportunity and if I feel really scared or wary of it and it's too big for me to take on, I'll still try and take it on. And that's how the rivers flowed. It's not been a plan.
Right.
Sorry, I went off topic. I know.
Okay, you've got
pretty much like my career, yeah.
Not at all. We've got another one from Maya, who says, getting what you have written professionally edited is what makes writers as vulnerable as one going into the ICU. Can you resonate with that?
Getting what you've written edited?
Edited, professionally edited.
In the beginning, probably. But soon when you've got the confidence in your own voice, the editor will start making fewer changes. And even if the changes come in, you can really push back and say that, no, this is what I want done. For example, I read you The Spy Who Lost Her Head. It has a very weird kind of writing, right? And the first editor changed it all into proper English, which would have spoiled the whole book. There's no point in it. So after some time, you get confidence in your own voice, which makes working with the editor a lot easier.
Right. This one's nice. There's a question from Ratna Devi who asks, which book do you like the most out of your books and why?
Which of my kids do I like the best? Huh? Tough question. The Midnight Years took the longest to write. Very tough book to write. Mental health of teenagers. The Flyaway Boy, as I said, is very close to my heart. And oh my God. They're my books. I mean, as I told you, I'm a writer who does not write unless I'm convinced about something. So each of those is just something that I feel very strongly about.
Fine, we let you off the hook for this one. The next question is from Purva Parashar, who says, it's very unfortunate that these days teenagers prefer reading from ebooks or online. They don't know the smell of good books. What's your opinion about this trend?
Yeah, so double-faced. I myself have resisted Kindle. I love, you can't see the bedside table, but there's always a stack of books there. And I love the feel of a book and against my tummy when I'm sleeping. That's priceless for me. And going back in the pages. But as Rukma pointed out, I don't leave very much space in my life for nostalgia. As I tell my boys who are growing up, I said, you should remove the word should have from your vocabulary. There should be no space for regret. So you can't go back and you couldn't have done something. So I should have done this is pointless. And the world is moving on. So at every stage right now, it's probably, think of all the trees we're saving by going digital or online. Look, I try to look at it in that perspective and say that, yeah, it's moving on. So there's, in this new scenario, what can we do to tell stories?
Right. The next question is, if you could tell your younger writing self anything, what would that be?
Oh, beautiful. What introspective questions these are. I'd say don't be afraid, because do what you're doing and you'll get where you have to go. Don't look for an end result. Just enjoy. You'll get there.
Nice. What was your early experience where you learned that language had power?
Wow. Could you tell me the names of the people asking me? Such interesting questions, all of these.
Sorry, this one's from Ranjana.
And the question, just slowly.
Words. Sorry, 1 second. I've mixed up the.
It's okay. When did I first realize that language on words had power?
Yeah. Just give me 1 second.
So I'm in love with words. I'm not, as my husband will tell you, that I exhaust my quota of 7,000 words very early in the day. So, which well, his lasts for about a month, and I love words. So today, for example, there was another writer called Madhulika Little who writes historical fiction, and she posted something about Portuguese, Mosambi, right? Sweet limes. So the word came from the Portuguese who brought it in from Africa. They brought these, and they were called Mozambique oranges. So Mozambique. So I love words. I love the root of where words come from, how you use them. And when I do workshops, I tell people not to use an easy word, to try and find something that really means it. Don't use good, nice, cute, fine, because the power of words is mighty.
Thank you. This one's from Fozia Ansari. How do you balance making demands on the reader with taking care of the reader?
Wow, Okay. I don't take care of the reader. Not my business. My business is not to be a people pleaser. Otherwise, I would have, I think, maybe, gone in to write romances or something that, earn by the millions or billions. Maybe I will. Okay, anonymous, Rukma. Yeah, the anonymous Twitter self. But I do like to make the reader think. That's the business that I'm in. To think again. To think and then think again about certain stereotypes, hopefully.
Okay, we've
And
got
to laugh.
Meeta, I will let you take over. Thank you, Jane.
Thank you so much, Jane and Rukma there. And I do wish to apologize to the rest of the people whose questions are still pending.
Oh, there are more questions. Oops. Okay.
We are over time by 3 minutes, and I'm very strict about keeping time. Starting in time and finishing in time is one thing. But again, Jane, as expected from you, you are superlative. I don't know what to say. Thank you so much. And
Say it
Rukma,
anyway. I like compliments. Yeah.
okay, I'm going to say it again. You are just simply wonderful, and I love you so much. Rukma, thank you.
Thank you, Rukma. Yeah.
I'm having you back home, frankly speaking. So it was great to just listen to your questions and for holding the session together. And I'd like to thank everyone in the audience who stayed with us for an hour.
Yeah, there were some really thought-provoking questions from Rukma, definitely, and also the ones that came up off the bat. Wow.
Yeah, and the ones that are pending are also as thoughtful, but I apologize once again. So we'll see you next month for another Right Circle. That's for our audiences, and another expression of gratitude for Jane and Rukma. Bye-bye. Good night.
Thank you, Meeta.
Bye.
Thank you
Good
for the
night.
opportunity.
Thanks so much for
Bye-bye.
having me.